I don't care what people will think of me. If I have to incorporate gang in this war, then that's what the hell I'm gonna do. I'm trying to win, and those boys know how to unalive people very quickly. Hell, they've been unaliving themselves.
Alright, you kids get to bed, I get the storybook.
Trump gets the U.S. gangs to join World War III. The sun rose hot over Jerusalem, but it was the fire from the skies that turned the day dark. It was June 10th, 2025. Out of nowhere, Iran's Revolutionary Guard launched a blitz of missiles and drones across Israel's northern and eastern borders. The Iron Dome missile defense system lit up like fireworks, but even it couldn't stop everything. Cities from Haifa to Beersheba were rocked by explosions. Families sitting in their homes eating dinner were instantly ripped to bloody shreds when the bombs ripped through their homes. CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, every global broadcast cut to emergency coverage as Israeli ambulances screamed through smoke-filled streets. Images of charred buildings and civilians clutching one another in disbelief echoed around the globe. The world was stunned. At 3:17 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, just hours after the initial missile barrage, President Donald Trump, reelected by a narrow and controversial margin 7 months earlier, strode into the White House press room with a face like a hard-ass fat stone.
To all the American people,
He began, voice steely, fingers gripping the sides of the podium.
What we have witnessed today is not just an attack on Israel. It is an attack on peace, on democracy, and on the United States of America, and I won't stand for that shit. Excuse my language, people.
Cameras flash. Reporters lean forward.
This aggression by Iran will not stand. I say to the Ayatollah, back off immediately, or face the full force of the United States military. And I do mean full force.
The warning was clear, brief, no room for negotiation. But halfway across the world, in a marble walled palace in Tehran, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei watched Trump's speech with a face devoid of concern. His advisors stood around a long table cluttered with maps, while an aide translated the president's words. The Ayatollah raised one hand slowly. "Send the second wave," he said. That night, as families in Tel Aviv gathered in bomb shelters, the sky roared again. This time, the bombs weren't meant to shock. They were meant to destroy. An oil refinery was hit. A hospital collapsed, crushing hundreds of human bodies under brick and rebar. The Tel Aviv Stock Exchange building was reduced to rubble. Israel declared a state of total war. By morning, World War III had officially begun. NATO was in disarray. China and Russia issued vague statements of neutral concern, but were later revealed to be funneling weapons to Iran behind closed doors. The European Union held emergency meetings but couldn't agree on sanctions. France and Germany argued Britain abstained. Only one country was ready to act immediately, and that country had Donald Trump as its leader. Meanwhile, at the Pentagon, "Sir, the Israeli Defense Forces are requesting immediate support," General Landon Pierce told Trump during a Situation Room briefing. "If we don't mobilize now, they might fall before the week is out." Trump sat at the head of the table, surrounded by military brass and intelligence chiefs. His jaw clenched.
How many of, what do you people call them, troops? How many troops can we move in the next 48 hours?
9,000, Mr. President, Pierce replied, mostly from bases in Germany, Qatar, and San Diego.
That's a small number. Are they ready?
Pierce hesitated. They're trained, yes, but most of them are of this new Gen Z generation. Soft, TikTok kids, great on video game software, but not great under real fire, as the black people say. When shit gets real, Trump squinted.
Jesus Christ. We're sending influencers to fight real terrorists?
On the streets of America, the news of war broke like a tidal wave. Gas prices jumped to $8 per gallon. Stock market shivered. College campuses. And then various cities held protests. TikTok exploded with political content, meme wars, and hashtags like hashtags World War III and not my war. In neighborhoods across cities like Chicago, LA, Miami, Atlanta, and Detroit, another conversation was taking place. On porches, corners, and prison phones, salons, and barbershops. The official military deployment began on July 4, 2025, just 2 weeks after the first bombs hit Tel Aviv. Operation Lion Shield was greenlit, and C-17 Globemasters began lifting off from airstrips across America, packed with nervous, wide-eyed troops. But these weren't the battle-hardened grunts of old-school war movies. No. These were millennials and Gen Z troops, many of whom had enlisted more for college tuition and healthcare than actual combat. They had tattoos of anime characters, carried emotional support animals, and posted TikToks from barracks with captions like, headed to World War III but still vibing. Inside the planes, silence reigned. Some soldiers clutched Bibles, others clutched Nintendo Switches, a few even live streamed from 30,000 feet. In the White House Situation Room, General Pierce was giving President Trump a rundown of the logistics when he hesitated. Mr. President, sir, we're going to have a morale issue. These kids are skilled in tech drones and simulations, but they've never been shot at. And we're not facing tribal militias this time. We're going against Iran's Quds force, backed by Chinese advisors and Russian arms. Trump leaned back in his chair, frustrated.
What happened to the Marines who stormed Fallujah? The Rangers who jumped into Panama? Where are the goddamn warriors?
They retired, sir, Pierce said bluntly. What we have now are digital warriors. Most of them grew up online. They're not cowards, but they're soft. Trump cursed under his breath. July 22nd, 2025. Near the Gaza border, by the third week of fighting, 3,357 American troops were confirmed dead. Another 9,000 wounded. The media was relentless. Headlines read, Operation Lion Shield becomes bloodbath. Trump's Gen Z army gets slaughtered. Footage leaked of American soldiers bitching up under fire, some even throwing down their weapons and surrendering. Telegram channels flooded with propaganda videos from Iran mocking the U.S. military's softness. The phrase TikTok army trended globally. In Tel Aviv, IDF commanders began privately requesting that U.S. support be limited to supplies and air cover. They're liabilities, an Israeli colonel said. We can't win a war babysitting Americans who panic when their phones die. July 25, 2025. Back in D.C., Trump's approval rating had dropped to 82%, the lowest since his re-election. Protesters gathered outside the White House. Veterans groups began voicing concern. Even some Republican senators broke ranks and questioned his leadership. In an emergency cabinet meeting, Trump slammed the table. I need a win. I need it now, damn it. His generals sat silent, exchanging glances but offering no real solutions. They had grown tired of Trump's volatile leadership and were not eager to bail him out.
Well,
Trump barked.
Don't just sit there like fucking statues. I need options.
Crickets. No one spoke. No one had a plan. That night, as the Trump family sat around the long mahogany dinner table beneath the gold chandeliers of the White House, Trump shoved his fork into an undercooked steak and stared into space. The president's youngest son, Barron, now 19, barely touched his food. His face was buried in his phone.
What the hell are you looking at that's more important than eating with your family?
Trump grumbled. Barron glanced up, then turned his screen toward his father. The Clubhouse app. Some Cali gang dudes on it going off on everybody. I watch him all the time, Dad. He's super gangster, but funny as hell at the same time. His name's Wack 100. A lot of YouTubers repost his Clubhouse room conversations. Melania arched an eyebrow. Wack 100? That name sounds ridiculous. Trump stared at the screen for a moment, watching the live session where Wack 100, wearing a red rag in his thumbnail pic, cursed out a panel of rival gangsters with expert comedic timing and ruthless precision. Trump suddenly smiled. What if, he said to himself,
we stopped using these soft-ass troops and used people who are actually built for war?
Barron paused. You're not saying, I'm saying it, Trump said, eyes lighting up.
Call that guy, son. MD him. We're getting those gangbangers to fight this war for us.
Barron giggled and corrected his dad, or his DM dad, not MD. It was 11:42 p.m. when Barron Trump slid into the DMs of the most unlikely wartime contact in American history, at official Wack 100. Hey, Mr. Wack, I'm Barron Trump. Real talk, my pops want to holler at you. It's serious, not a joke. The message was short, direct, and within 20 minutes, Wack 100 responded with a voice note laced in skepticism and swagger.
I got homies with parole meetings. He better be talking real. Ain't got time for no cap.
Barron went back and forth with the notorious social media gangster for a few more minutes before connecting him with his dad. The next morning, a private Gulfstream jet touched down at Burbank Airport. Secret Service agents waited on the tarmac as Wack 100, clad in a red hoodie, black joggers, and Cartier shades, stepped out of a matte black Escalade flanked by two associates. He didn't smile, didn't shake hands, just nodded once.
Take me to the president,
he said. Several hours later, inside of the Oval Office, the Secret Service tried to brief Wack on the formalities, but he waved them off.
Y'all wanted me here. I came. Don't tell me how to act. I act how I act.
When the doors to the Oval Office opened, Wack 100 didn't hesitate as Trump strolled in as if he was a European king. Donald Trump shook hands with Wack and then sat at the resolute desk, arms crossed. Behind him, military advisors and senior aides lined the walls. Wack's boys watched nervously from corner chairs. Trump spoke first.
You sound like the scariest man on planet Earth on that app. I need a man like you.
Wack smirked. Trump chuckled, then turned serious.
America's getting beat up out there. These kids we're sending, they're not made for war. They're made for Wi-Fi and safe spaces.
Wack folded his arms.
So you want me to help you send real soldiers? Soldiers from where I come from?
Exactly, Trump said.
Gang guys like yourself. You boys have grit. You're tough as nails, and that's what we need to win this war.
Wack leaned back, stroking his chin.
You won't kill us, huh? Niggas from the street. People who know war because we've been fighting one since we was born, thanks to this corrupt-ass system y'all call a government.
The room tensed as Trump sat up in his chair.
Be easy there, Mr. Wack. Of course, you and those boys are going to get compensated for your work. I'll issue presidential pardons for every incarcerated gang member that you boys know. And I'll issue $10,000 checks for every gang member that you get to sign up. As for the pardons, they have to be within reason, though. No child molesters or rapists.
Wack raised a brow. And you want me to call who? Everybody? All of the gangs, Trump said. You know those people. I don't. Now, you've got access, influence. I've got the power. You help me win this war, and your whole world changes. You go from Clubhouse to the history books. A second pass. Then another. Wack 100 looked around the room at the uncomfortable generals, the stunned aides, and offered a confident thumbs up. Trump grinned.
You can call Mr. Snoop Dogg. He's a good friend of mine and performed at my inauguration. You can also call Mr. Hoover. I recently pardoned him, so that old bastard owes me a favor anyway. Call whoever you gotta call. Just get the gang people to help us with this war.
Wack sucked his teeth and coughed.
I'ma do my job, but you better get those pardons ready, Mr. President.
Trump extended a hand. Wack 100 didn't shake it at first. He pulled out his phone, hit the record button, and looked into the camera. This Wack 100. I'm in the Oval Office. Trump wants me to gather up all the gangsters to ride on Iran, China, and Russia. Anyone interested, hit my line. He posted it. Trump finally smiled. We just changed the game. Wack 100 had once orchestrated record deals, brokered peace between rival rappers, and ran L.A. streets with a steel tongue and bulletproof ego. But nothing prepared him for what he was doing now, assembling the most dangerous men in America under one cause. This ain't no damn truce, he told them. This a campaign. Every gang was represented, every color, creed, city, and set. The Snoop Dogg, the Crip ambassador, held a blue rag in one hand and an iPad with deployment maps in the other. Larry Hoover, freed from Florence ADX just weeks earlier, sat in his state prison cell like a dignitary returning from exile, ready to guide the gangster disciples. And OG Teflon from the Vice Lords called in from St. Louis, with 400 names on the list and a pledge of absolute commitment, when twin from Zoe Pound, war-scarred and straight from Little Haiti, promised 300 of his Zoes were already doing weapons drills in the Everglades. The black disciples and Latin kings brought their own commanders and demanded their own platoon structures, but they didn't argue with the mission. The summit, held in a nondescript compound outside of Atlanta, resembled a war council crossed with a hip-hop festival. Security was tighter than any Pentagon meeting. Secret Service monitored from a hidden trailer nearby. Trump's liaison, a young White House aide named Kyle, tried to blend in, failing miserably in his J-Dot crew blazer. Wack 100 stood at the front of the room.
We've bled in every block from Compton to Camden, New Jersey. But this ain't about sets no more. This ain't even about the U.S. military. This is about us proving we ain't just what the system painted us as. We finna go to war, and we gonna win it.
Applause erupted. Blue, red, black, gold all stood and nodded. It was the most unlikely military alliance in modern history. After hearing the news, the Pentagon was furious. General Landon Pierce, head of Central Command, nearly blew a gasket in the Situation Room. Mr. President, with all due respect, we're talking about criminals, felons, street enforcers, and you want to arm them with high-grade military weaponry? Trump, unfazed, leaned back in his leather chair.
I want to win a war. And your college kids with rainbow patches and anxiety pills ain't cutting it. Let the wolves loose.
Why you staring at my booty like that? Since you want to act all thirsty, you need to hit that like and subscribe button for this video. You keep staring at my booty and I'ma tell my man GK, and he ain't gonna let you watch his stories no mo.
By early August 2025, Operation Street Shield was official. Gang units were flown to secret bases in Georgia, Arizona, and New Mexico for crash course training. Retired Marines and private contractors were hired to condition them, many of whom doubted the plan until they saw the recruits in action. These gangbangers don't flinch, one drill instructor admitted. They're raw, undisciplined, but fearless. They don't scare easy. Within 3 weeks, Crip Unit Echo 1 was training in drone warfare. And Blood Unit Foxtrot, 2 specialized in close quarters building raids. And DD and BD platoons were trained side by side in armored convoy tactics. And Dets and Vice Lords and Zoes adapted to desert combat at Fort Irwin with terrifying speed. They were assigned their own patches, custom uniforms, and call signs. The Pentagon reluctantly granted them auxiliary combatant status under Trump's executive war decree. Each gang had a representative embedded with traditional military liaisons, acting as translators, both linguistically and culturally. No one questioned chain of command. Wack 100 oversaw everything like a wartime CEO. On August 29th, media coverage erupted. CNN broke the story first. President Trump enlists American gangs to fight in World War III. Outrage followed instantly. Congress threatened hearings. Journalists called it madness. Twitter exploded. But Trump was immune. In a defiant press conference outside the White House, he said, "America tried sending the weak. Now we're sending the warriors. If that offends you, maybe you should try winning a war." Deployment began. By September, over 17,000 gangbangers were loaded onto military transport planes, headed for bases in Israel, Iraq, and Jordan. They wore J's instead of combat boots and carried M4S instead Glocks, but their swagger was unmistakable. Before one flight took off from Andrews Air Force Base, a Crips soldier yelled, "Hey, Iran, y'all about to meet a Compton nigga for real." Trump watched from a private briefing room, arms crossed, smirking. Now this, he said to no one in particular, is how you flip the script. The world had doubted them, mocked them, laughed at the idea of gang members in uniform. But when their Air Jordans hit the sand, the game changed overnight. In the deserts of Iran and the war-torn outskirts of Damascus, American gang soldiers brought a new type of warfare, fast, brutal, and unpredictable. These weren't kids terrified of loud noises. These were men who dodged bullets in alleyways, moved like ghosts through the trenches, and knew how to handle heat under pressure. They came with no fear, just fury. A Crip fire team and a Pyru unit, historically mortal enemies, swept through an Iranian weapons depot outside Basra with ruthless precision. Body cams captured the 2 squads moving as one, flanking guards, clearing corridors, and planting charges in record time. One video clip, unedited raw, went viral within hours. A Pyru in a red helmet and a Crip in blue fatigues high-fived after blowing up an Iranian tank together, flames roaring behind them. The internet dubbed it, when the hood went global. Even Fox News called it an act of unity not seen since Normandy. Iran's elite forces were disoriented. Their Soviet-era tactics were no match for urban combatants who lived off instinct and survived off grit. The battlefield had changed, and the streets were winning it. Iran was humiliated and called for help. China answered first, sending 2 battalions of mechanized infantry and special ops. Russia followed with Spetsnaz teams and missile techs. It was a clear message. The East was standing together. But what they didn't expect was Lil NATO, born Marcus Stacks McLean from Watts, Los Angeles. Lil NATO was a former Crip shot 6 times before age 22. By 27, he was leading Blue Unit Kilo 9, a hybrid special ops team composed of Crips, Latin Kings, and Vice Lords. In late October 2025, Lil NATO led a daring midnight raid on a heavily guarded Iranian communications hub in western Iran. The facility was guarded by a joint force of Iranian Kurds and Chinese Pila. Intel said it was a suicide mission. Lil NATO said, "Ain't no such thing when your life been war." Using smuggled tunnels and rooftop entry tactics straight out of LA's gang playbook, NATO's team breached the compound, neutralized 19 enemy combatants, and captured a top Iranian general who had been coordinating airstrikes. CNN reported it as one of the most precise urban warfare operations in modern U.S. military history. America had found its new battlefield legend, and his name came from the streets. Back in the U.S., Trump's approval rating rocketed from to 61% Black and Latino families, many from forgotten, underserved communities, flooded social media with clips of their sons, cousins, and partners in uniform, posing with Israeli commanders or guarding high-value compounds in Iraq. My little bro doing something positive. He out there with a purpose now, said one proud sister in Chicago. The Trump administration moved quickly. In a nationally televised event, Trump sat in the Oval Office and signed 2,000 plus pardons for inmates whose names had been submitted by Wack 100 and verified by the Department of Justice. Prison doors opened from Florence ADX to Big Sandy. Mothers wept. Brothers cheered. That same night, Wack 100 and Snoop Dogg appeared on Fox News, seated beside Tucker Carlson. Snoop said, "We already been soldiers, just never had a cause that made the country care." Wack leaned in. Trump gave us one. Angered by battlefield losses, Russia launched cyber attacks on U.S. power grids and banking systems in mid-November. The East Coast experienced 2 brief blackouts. The stock market jolted. Public confidence wavered. But the streets weren't just about guns anymore. Enter Silicon Red, real name Jamal Carter, a former blood from Harlem turned software engineer while doing a 10-year bid in federal prison. Now, with a laptop and a presidential pardon, he led a digital unit of ex-hackers and gang-affiliated coders called the Wire Lords. In a counter-strike dubbed Operation Firewall Flame, Silicon Red's team took down over 170 Russian financial servers, exposed private Kremlin documents, and froze $4.2 billion in state assets. It was the first time in U.S. history that a former street gang ran point on cyber defense. The Pentagon, shocked. The Kremlin, embarrassed. The streets, triumphant. By December, U.S. and Israeli forces had encircled Tehran. The Iranian capital stood on its last legs. But it wasn't Navy SEALs who would lead the final charge. It was Operation Street Shield. Under coordinated air support, thousands of gang units breached Tehran's eastern defenses, clearing building after building. Crips with drones, Bloods with breaching charges, Latin Kings with sniper overwatch. The GDs and BDS, long divided by Chicago's bloodshed, shared bullets and bread as they stormed bunkers together. Trump, watching from the Situation Room, leaned in toward the screen. "This is beautiful. Look at them. They're like Spartans from Atlanta." At 3:12 a.m. local time, Tehran fell. Iran declared a truce. The war was over. Celebrations erupted around the world. Parades in New York, cheers in Tel Aviv, fireworks in D.C. Trump held the most watched press event in world history on the south lawn of the White House. At his side, Wack 100 in a custom red and gold tux, Snoop in full dress blues with Crip insignia, Larry Hoover wearing aviators and a medal on his chest. Netflix announced a $50 million documentary series titled Street Soldiers, The War They Didn't See Coming. Wack's Clubhouse TV was picked up by Showtime. Snoop launched a line of MREs called Snoop Meals. Trump was already floating a Nobel Peace Prize nomination. Melania, sipping champagne, simply said, well, it worked. Surprisingly, with Iran defeated, China and Russia pulled back. Neither was ready to commit more resources after watching Tehran fall under street warfare tactics no general had predicted. American troops, traditional and unconventional, returned home to cheers. In L.A., Crips and Bloods rode together in open-air Humvees through Compton. In Chicago, GDs and BDS shared a stage, hugging in front of cameras. In Florida, Zoe Pound returned as heroes. Some gang members enlisted officially. Others went home with medals, jobs, and a new sense of purpose. For the first time in decades, the inner cities felt like they'd won something. In January 2026, Trump introduced Operation Redemption, a federal initiative to employ reform gang members in national service, mentorship, and cybersecurity roles. The bill was controversial. Democrats balked. Traditional Republicans raised eyebrows. But the people? They backed it. The war had shown them that redemption wasn't just possible, it was powerful. And as documentaries, movies, and street parades immortalized the warriors of World War III, one truth remained: Donald J. Trump had done the unthinkable. He weaponized the streets and won a war with the people nobody saw coming. The legend of Operation Street Shield was sealed. And don't get it twisted, y'all. We still don't mess with that orange fuck boy.
Out in their respective hoods for decades.